Australia is one of our oldest allies. We fought alongside each other in the First, Second World War, in the Korean War. They are a very deep and trusted partner of both the United Kingdom and the United States, and indeed form one of the core nations of the Five Eyes, which also adds New Zealand and Canada to it. So it was a natural choice, I think, for the Australians that when they decided to shift from diesel-electric submarine capability to finding a requirement that matched their need for a long, deep capability in subsea warfare, that they would go to that trusted partner. Because, the secrets of nuclear propulsion are very secret, they're very special, and therefore you need to share that with certain partners you can trust. And that was clearly what was partly in their mind when they approached us back in March.
But can we just be clear as to part of the purpose of this? China was not explicitly mentioned by any of the head of either of the heads of government or the head of state that were speaking yesterday. But clearly, nuclear-powered submarines, their ability to remain at sea, remain underwater, there is a surveillance capacity that is going to be used, and it will be directed, at least in part, towards China, we have to assume.
Well, I think it will be directed at lots of different threats. I mean, the reality is that at the moment Australia has diesel-electric Collins-class submarines. A diesel submarine is brilliant, they're very quiet, but what they do have to do is what we call snort or snorkel to recharge their batteries. They have to put up a mast, effectively, and can be detected, therefore, quite easily at certain periods of their sort of cycle. So while they can stay underwater, if they don't move at all for long periods, eventually they will have to come up if they're transiting or moving, and that would make them very, very easy to detect by big powers who've invested in that type of surveillance. A nuclear submarine can submerge for months on end without surfacing at all, and that allows them to have longer patrols, to further afield, but also to keep any adversary guessing, and I think that's also important.
I mean, again, you didn't explicitly mention the Chinese. We can say, however, the Chinese are taking this as a direct slight. They are livid. But interestingly, the French are also livid about this. Literally one of our closest allies. They did have the contract to build the submarines for the Australians. I'm just wondering how wise it is to annoy the French at a time that we are, in essence, relying on them to police those beaches in northern France and try and stop the flow of migrants.
Well, look, this is not about a sort of, we didn't go fishing for these opportunities. This was a fundamental. The Australians took a decision. They wanted a different capability in their military arsenal.
You can see both the Chinese and the French are annoyed about this.
Look, the French were contracted to deliver a submarine. I think when the Australians took a decision, they wanted to switch out of that and into nuclear. That opened up for them different opportunities, and they clearly made that choice. And of course, each country has to make those choices in its own national security interests, and they have taken that decision. Look, we have no intention of doing anything to antagonise the French. The French are some of our closest military allies in Europe. We are sizable and comparable forces, and we do things together. In West Africa, we are together. We are providing Chinook squadrons to help them in their counter-terrorism fight. I get on extremely well with my French counterpart. Only recently, myself and the Foreign Secretary went to visit them in Paris, and we'll continue to work. We have common interests, both in the Pacific and here at home.
Well, the Foreign Secretary now, of course, the Justice Secretary, which it gives me an appropriate segue into the reshuffle action that took place yesterday. Before we get into the specifics of it, what was the purpose of this reshuffle? Was it simply to get rid of some dead wood?
I think it was two things. The Prime Minister wanted to bring forward a number of women MPs who, he is determined to both level up not only in the country but also in my party's representation around the cabinet table. And I think it's really important you bring on talent, and I think he was determined to do that. And we have some fantastic people on our backbenches who need a time in government, and I think that is important. Now, you don't do that in a one-hour. Like me, I've served every rank in government, from the most junior all the way through to the cabinet over time, and I think it's important they get experience under the belt. So I think once you start doing that, once you start effectively changing the pack of cards inevitably needs to be redealt or reshuffled, and that's what happens.
But you look at some of the people that were leaving. I mean, you're not telling me that Gavin Williamson was sacked because he was too competent, that he was showing everyone else in cabinet up.
No, look, the Prime Minister has obviously lots of reasons why he reshuffles cabinets. But look, fundamentally, a lot of my colleagues, Gavin has done actually a fantastic job for FE colleges. In my constituency in Preston and Lancashire, we have lots of FE colleges. And Gavin really believes in FE colleges. And I think they've often been a Cinderella part of the education sector. So, I think it's unfair to say that about Gavin. I think what happens to all of us, and it will happen to me, because that is the nature of the politics we're in, is eventually the Prime Minister says, I want to make way for somebody else. and as a result, you move on.
There have been some eyebrows raised over some of the appointments, and it does appear that once again the Prime Minister is perhaps rewarding loyalty rather than selecting the most competent people for the job. I mean, Nadine Dorries, for example, I mean, with respect, what does Nadine Dorries know about culture, media and/or sport?
Well, I think Nadine Dorries is actually a record-breaking. Well, she's a best-selling author. If that isn't part of culture, well, look, I couldn't even begin to write a chapter, let alone book. Nadine Dorries took herself when she was an MP and decided she was going to be an author. She's sold thousands and thousands of books. And now, if that isn't part of culture, media and sport, I don't know. What's great about Nadine Dorries is she produces culture that people buy and actually want to see, rather than some of the more crackpot schemes we've seen being funded in the past by taxpayers' money. I think one was on a programme not so long ago about something about 9/11. And I think, so she'll bring probably realism to it. But she's also from my part of the world. She's from the Northwest. She's a great, solid and competent, capable minister, and I think she'll be great.
She also voted against gay marriage. I don't know if Nadine Dorries has spent much time in theatre land.
Well, look, I think, as you know, culture, media and sport is a very, very broad range of industry. It's vast. It's not just, 24-hour news here. We are sitting here. It links all the way through to obviously, theatrical performances. Look, I think Nadine will be a great Secretary of State. And I think the other thing we should remember is, Secretary of States are there to deliver the government's agenda and along the manifesto. They're there to get their departments in line, deliver within their means and deliver it. And DCMS is a very important growing sector, and Nadine will be able to deliver that.
Clearly, you do not want to badmouth any of your colleagues. I wonder if you might make an exception. Dominic Raab, you didn't shed any tears over him leaving the FCO.
Look, Dominic has been quoted as saying he's delighted to go to the Ministry of Justice. He is a lawyer by trade, and what I would say is, I started my sort of working career as a soldier, and there is nothing better than being part of a department on a subject you know a lot about, that you're part of, and that you feel you can contribute to. And I think Dominic's, all my dealings with him in the Foreign Office, and he has had some great successes in the Foreign Office. He led, the integrated review and helped deliver that, which was bringing together both international aid, etc. Dominic understands the law, and that's pretty important if you're going to be the Lord Chancellor of this country.
But don't tell me you and your colleagues at the main building of the Ministry of Defence were not annoyed when presumably you were all pulling all-nighters, preparing to send servicemen and women out to Afghanistan to get people out of the country, whilst he was sitting in a sun lounger.
Look, I think that's unfair. Look, what we were all focused on is doing a job. He was focused on doing his job. And as you saw, the military deployed to Afghanistan in very, very difficult circumstances. We haven't given up on that. Let's not forget there are, in my area, in the Arab, there's some 240 people, 60 people are still there that we are working to get out the country. Over 40 have made it into third countries with their families, and we're starting to repatriate them. Look, it was a big operation. Dominic and the Foreign Office did some amazing things. Some of their officials were out there alongside ours. And I think, we shouldn't reduce this to where someone was on the night of a Friday night. I think the reality was it was a challenge for the whole international community, and we delivered that.
I do want to spend a good bit of time again on Arab in just a second, but perhaps that Liz Truss, by my reckoning, is the 5th Foreign Secretary since Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe was taken into custody by the Iranians. What hope is there that she will be the Foreign Secretary that finally sorts that mess out?
Well, I think your question is best, I'm afraid, directed at the Iranians on that. We have been trying at all levels to get her release, and others who are also held by the Iranian government. There's been a change of government in Tehran. We have tried lots and lots of methods. That is ongoing. We are still trying to deliver that. That will take the whole of government to deliver. One thing I can tell you about Liz has successfully concluded dozens and dozens of trade deals that many in the media said we would never get. She has delivered that. She has a very successful manner about her when she is abroad and engaging with people, and I think that success will transit from the International Trade Department to the Foreign Office really well.
Just one last question on the reshuffle. We spoke to the Minister on the programme yesterday about it. Michael Gove has been quoted as using racist language, specifically the term fuzzy wuzzies, and homophobic language in a speech that he made, admittedly, some years ago at the Cambridge Union. Now, you may well think that this does not affect his ability to remain in the Cabinet, but isn't it about time we heard from Michael Gove something of an apology for the use of that language?
Look, I didn't go to university, so but I do. What I read in the media about university is, while obviously they do lots of interesting things, they have these debates where I think they...
This was after he was a student. This was at the Cambridge Union, but it was after he was a student.
The closest I got to Cambridge, I think, was a visit once. I mean, I think Michael Gove is one of our most reforming ministers. He did an excellent job in education. You know, my children's education is better for his time at the Ministry of Education.
Shouldn't we at least hear from him on this story? Look, I don't understand.
I have never known Michael Gove to be shy of appearing on media rounds. He is very, very good, formidable performer at it. I'm sure you can put those questions to him. But fundamentally, I know Michael. He's not a racist. He's not homophobic in any way at all. He is, in fact, a great reforming minister in this government. And I'm actually very pleased that he's gone to this department because we all need some local government reforms, and we need to make sure that we start delivering on a range of issues.
Just in terms of the repatriation of people from Afghanistan, the Afghan Citizens Resettlement Scheme, what is the latest on that? We appear to be in a bit of a holding position, waiting for negotiations to take place between ourselves, UNHCR, various NGOs working in the region and other international partners.
Well, so remember there were 3 schemes originally. One was British passport holders, entitled personnel. One was the ARAP scheme. Those are people who effectively work directly or indirectly through contractors for the British Ministry of Defence or indeed other parts of the British government. And then there was the leave outside the rules, which were people such as women, campaigners, human rights campaigners, journalists, LGBT community. That last group, as you say, have been transferred into this new scheme. That's part of the 20,000 plus that we will be seeking to bring here. Of course, we have to manage some of those people because we have to get them out of the country. We have to manage them either with the Taliban or indeed, hopefully, through other third countries. And that's what we're in the process of doing. We have to manage it because we don't want the third countries to shut their borders and prevent them getting there. We have to give them some reassurances, and we have to put in place the right processes. But, you know, what I can say from my scheme, the ARAP scheme, we are absolutely constantly in touch with these people, the people that were called forward or eligible. That's some 263 plus their families. We've talked to nearly all of them, apart from about 40 odds that we haven't been able to get in touch with, and we keep trying. And we will do everything we can to continue to support it. As I've said all the way along, our ARAP scheme is open. It will remain open. We will repatriate them from third countries. We will bring some back. Some of them have turned up in Australia. Some of them turned up in the United States. Some of them turned up closer to Afghanistan, and we are bringing them back already.
Minister, good to see you this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you.